Okay, so it's about to become 12, 12 on 12, 12, 12. Let's see if we're still, we're still here, we're still here. Pretty cool, huh? All right, you guys. So, here's what we're doing. Section 11, Chapter 11, Section 1, find measures of central tendency and dispersion. So take just a minute to do the warm-up because it's kind of a review of some skills you might need for this particular section. So here's the answers. Sometimes with stuff like that, I enter it in the calculator, but I always put the fraction in parentheses. Otherwise, the calculator might take the square root of 145 first and then divide by 10. Just depends. Like, for example, it looks like this for the second one. I took the square root and I put 402 divided by 8 in parentheses. Got 7.1. And here you just kind of plug in what they told you P was, and you solve for the dollar amount of $15.80. Alright, so here's some vocab that you're going to have to become somewhat familiar with. Some of it you will have heard before. Statistics is the numerical values used to summarize and compare sets of data. So you're going to get like some numbers, and you can use them to compare, like finding the mean and the median and the mode, to compare different sets of data. Measures of central tendency. Basically, you're just talking about numbers used to represent the middle or the central of a data set. The mean, median, and mode are the three that we use. Average represents with you'll see that represented as an X with a line over it. That means average. And when you find the mean, you just add all the numbers and divide by how many there are. Median is the middle set of numbers. When the numbers are put in order from smallest to biggest, it's whatever number lies in the middle. And the mode is the most occurring values. So we're going to look at all those. Measure of dispersion is a statistic that shows how spread out the values are. The most common one that we use is range, and you just take the largest value minus the smallest value, and that gives you the range. The other thing we're looking at is standard deviation. It's the typical difference, or this little symbol here, deviation, between a data value and the mean. So you take each piece of data and you take the difference of it, and I'm going to show you how to do all that to find the standard deviation, the typical difference. This is also read as the sigma, because that's the Greek symbol for sigma. Sigma of. Okay? All right, outlier is a value that is much larger than or much less than most of the other values in a data set. So let's work with some of this stuff. The data set gives the times and minutes for runners in 2 races. Find the mean, median, mode or modes, sometimes there's more than one, and a range of each data set and the standard deviation. For most of this, I'm just going to have you do it right on the calculator. We are going to learn how to do standard deviation by hand as well, but for most of this, you can just put this all in the calculator by entering it as a list. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And remember, you go to Stat, and you're going to edit your lists. So push Enter. And what I want to do is I already have some numbers here, so I'm going to clear them out. And go up, clear, and down, and it's gone. And to make sure all your lists are cleared. So I'm going to put race A under the first list here. Okay, just finishing up the second list. So you put them all in there, you push Enter afterwards. Make sure they match up and you have the same amount of data in each if that's the case. I often will just kind of double check to make sure I entered them correctly. All right, now, to find the mean, all you want is you want to close out of this. So I'm going to do second quit. I'm going to go back to Stat, over to Calc, because I want the Calculate to tell me some stuff about these statistics that I added in here. So I'm going to push Enter, and then I'm going to push Enter again. So this is for the first list. So the mean for race A is, I'm going to round it up, 8.7. And then if I arrow down, actually you can see right here, you can see the sigma of that data right there, the standard deviation. So I'm going to go down and I'm going to write that the standard deviation was 2.2. And then let's go down and look a little further at what this is. This tells me how many pieces of data I had in there. That's the smallest value. The Q's here are quadrants if you were making a box and whisker plot, but we're not doing that. The MED is the median, so it's 9. Okay, this is the minimum number, this is the maximum number, so for the range I can subtract the biggest number from the smallest number. 12 minus 4 is 8. And the other thing I am looking for is the mode. Can't get that off the calculator, you just have to go and look. I have 2 modes. 8 shows up twice here, and 9 shows up twice. So I have 8 and 9 for that particular data set. Okay, for the second data set, I need to go back to stats and calc, and then I need to push enter, but I need to tell the calculator I want it to read from list 2. So remember list 2, L2 is right here, can't see that, right here above this, right here, above the 2 it says L2, so I need that. So I'm going to hit second 2, and then it goes and gives me the data for that list. So this first thing is the mean. I'm going to round it to 7.7 for this race. And then I'm going to arrow down and see what else I see here. Oh, right here is the standard deviation. So I'm going to put 1.8, round just to 1 decimal places. There's 9 pieces of data. The minimum number was 5. The median is 8, so I'm going to put that in there. The max was 11, so you can just also get that from your table here. 11 minus 5 is my range, so that's going to be 6. And the last thing I need is the mode, which I cannot get from the calculator. I have to just kind of look right at my data here and see that I have 3/8, so that's my mode right there. All right, there you go. Now, of course, you could do this by hand. If you needed to find the average, you could add all these up and divide by 9 to get the average for each of those data sets. When they're in order, if you're looking for the median, you just kind of knock off 4 from each side and see what number's in the middle, and it's 9 for there. Same with this, what number's in the middle. Mode is how many there are, the most of. And then range, of course, you just take the highest number, subtract the lowest number. So all of this you could pretty much do easily by hand. Standard deviation, you can also do by hand. It just takes a little longer. I'm going to show you how to do that on the other side. So here you go. This is the steps. This is actually the equation they show you in the book as to how to find the sigma of a set of data. So what we do is we find the mean. So we're going to kind of be flip-flopping back and forth. The mean for, let's use our first set of data, race A. So the mean was 8.7. So I already did that. Okay. Okay, so I decided this set is going to take too long for the 9 pieces. So let's just pick some new values. Let's say we're using, these are heights of people, 52, 48, 46, and 49. So if I have to do this by hand, I'm going to find the mean. So I add these all up, 52 plus 48 plus 46 plus 49, and I get 195, and I divide that by 4, and my mean is about 48.75. It's the average height. Okay. So then for number 2, this says you got to take each piece of data, and you take and you subtract the average from it. So I'm going to start with 52 minus 48.75, and then I have to square that. I'm going to add to that the second piece of data, 48 minus 48.75 squared. And then add the third piece of data, 46 minus 48.75 squared. And you do the same thing for the last piece of data. 49 minus 48.75 squared. And when you do that math, you get 18.75. Let me just refresh your memory on the definition of standard deviation. We're finding out the typical difference of each piece of data between it and the average. Okay? So then it says add above answers, which we did already. And then number 4 says divide by the number of terms. Well, remember I had 4 terms, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to take 18.75 and divide it by 4, which equals 4.6875. And then I have to square root the answer. So the square root the answer. So take the square root of 4.6875 and it equals 2.165. So the standard deviation for this particular set of data is 2.165. Okay, for this next example, we're going to look at your training for a triathlon. The miles that you ride your bike for 7 weeks are each week 17, 20, 16, 18, 22, 19, and 20. And then what we're going to do is we're going to find the mean, median, and mode and standard deviation using this. And then we're going to add in an outlier of only 3. And we're going to see how it changes the different measures of central tendency and the range and the standard deviation. So just to refresh your memory, we're going to go in and we are going to do this on the calculator, just this one set of data here. So again, I want you to go to Stat, and you're going to edit your lists. You're going to clear whatever list you have in there and put in these numbers. Okay, I have them in my list. Now I'm going to go back to Stat, and I want it to calculate the statistics on that particular set of data. So I push Enter, and just Enter since there's only one list in there. All right, the first number tells me that the mean is 18.9, the average, which you could also just add up and divide by 7 pieces. And then arrow down, the standard deviation is 1.9, I'm going to say. Arrow down to find the median. Okay, the median is 19. If I were to put them in order, that would be the number in the middle. And the range is from 22 minus 16, which is 6. And the mode, you can tell here that 20 shows up twice, so that's the mode. Okay. Well, this says your mileage the next week is an outlier of 3. Find the mean, median, mode, range, and standard deviation. I'm just going to tell you what those are. If I were to go back to my list and put in a 3 and then do this all over again, this is what I would get. 16.9, 18.5, 20, 19, and 5.5. Oh my. These didn't change too much, but these really did change drastically. Okay? Which measures of central tendency does the outlier affect the most? Remember, central tendency is mean, median, and mode. Okay? So it affects the average the most because the median isn't affected too much and the mode wasn't affected at all. So it does affect the average the most, which sort of makes sense if you think about it. And then which one does it affect the least? Well, it doesn't change the mode at all. It doesn't change that is the number that appears the most. How does the outlier change the range and the standard deviation? Well, the range increases quite a bit because you're adding in a 3 here, which would be a huge difference between the biggest number and the smallest number. And the standard deviation changed quite a bit as well. Okay, so you just would say they both increase quite a bit. So just to summarize kind of what we did today, we really worked with the measures of central tendency, which were mean, median, and mode, to compare data sets. And then we also really thought about standard deviation, which is, as a reminder, the typical difference between each data value and the average. It's read as sigma of, which is what we did here. And if you look, this is kind of, if you look at this, it's kind of true. I mean, it says here the standard deviation is 2.165, and that's not too far off of there, or there, or there, or there. They didn't alter that much. And then we look to see how if you add in an outlier, it changes the range and the standard deviation quite a bit. And its most effect is on the mean. There you go.